What's going on, everyone? It is the Derv, and today I'm bringing you an absolutely busted Prismatic Warlock build. I believe Strand and Solar were made for each other, and I get to showcase this very thought in this build. I take an exotic piece of armor that is a fan favorite, along with an older fan favorite exotic weapon that maybe some of you have forgotten about. Doesn't matter, we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to blend it together in an absolutely chaotic and explosive Prismatic Warlock build. If you've been looking for a way to incorporate your Strand and Solar together while blending all the buffs the artifact in the season has to offer, look no further. This is the build for you. And also, shout out to I'm Laughing At You, who invited me to their fire team during the making of this video. If you see their fire team invite pop up at any point during this video, go ahead and comment I'm Laughing At You, and shout out to them for trying to include me in their quest for power. Let's get it going. To get started with our Swarming Fire Prismatic Warlock, we're going to go with our Needle Storm. After embedding themselves in the environment, the needles will reweave into a host of threadlings. Threadlings you create will return to you and perch if they can't find any nearby targets. Damaging targets with your weapons or melee will send out perched threadlings to attack. This is going to be step one for creating as much chaos on the battlefield as possible. For abilities, we're going to go with Phoenix Dive, Burst Glide, and we're going to dive into both the Arcane Needle for its stack of 3 charges and the Threadling Grenade. Our goal is to create as many green allies, whether those are unraveling rounds or tangles or threadlings, on the battlefield as possible. For our aspects, we're going to go with Feed the Void. Defeat a target with any ability to activate Devour. Your Devour effects are improved, restoring additional health and grenade energy. This is going to be key. We're going to have damage resistance, but we also need our health back and as many grenades as possible. Weaver's Call is going to round out our aspects. 3 fragment slots on this, so take advantage of that. Activate your class ability to weave 3 threadlings and deploy any threadlings you have perched. Targets defeated by strand damage have a chance to generate a perched threadling. This is going to be key, which is also why we are using the Phoenix Dive. You can just dive, activate Weaver's Call, and carry on about your business while spreading strand debuffs everywhere. For our fragments, first up on the list is going to be Facet of Purpose. Picking up an orb of power grants us woven mail. Your body is encased in protective mesh of tightly woven strand matter, greatly reducing any incoming non-precision damage. This is going to be key as we are going to be aggressively moving through the battlefield. Next up, we've got Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. Of course, for us, that's going to mean tangles. And we're also going to be generating fire sprites. Tangles, of course, and not a strand matter, swirling potential. Tangles can be shot and destroyed or picked up and thrown, dealing damage. Defeating targets affected by any strand debuff will unwind them into a tangle. Of course, fire sprites, a luminous concentration of solar energy. When picked up, fire sprites grant grenade energy. We're going to be generating a ton of tangles and fire sprites this entire build. Facet of Balance, next up, rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. We're going to be bouncing back and forth between these two interchangeably, which means we're going to have virtually unlimited ability uptime. Next up is going to be Facet of Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. You are going to be able to kind of spam Transcendence in this, although it's not going to be your focal point for this style of play. You, of course, are going to be aggressive because we're going to be Phoenix diving around groups of enemies, so being more resistant to damage is key here. Next up, a fragment that I don't often talk enough about, Facet of Bravery. Defeating targets with grenade final blows grants volatile rounds to void weapons. Defeating targets with powered melee final blows grants unraveling rounds to your strand weapons. Because we are not using Lightning Surge on this like so many of my other Warlock builds, we are going to be instead utilizing the unraveling rounds buff that we are going to get for our strand weapons. Our main ad clear is going to be strand anyways, as well as our heavy weapon. So this is going to be key in generating additional chaos, aka tick damage, from our strand weapons. For stat distribution, I recommend focusing on super, grenade, and weapons in that order. you'll see here that I have 97 in melee. The reason I have 97 in melee is because I do want as much additional ability energy as possible, but in order to get additional energy from, or I guess I should say damage from my weapons, I want to at least have my weapons at a 70. So if you can't get your melee all the way up to where I've got it, which is 97, that's fine. A 75, 80, somewhere in there is perfectly fine. You won't be hurting for ability energy. Remember, 70 is the new 100 in terms of return rate for ability energy. So being able to have a little extra on top is going to be nice. But your main play is going to be throwing out those Threadling grenades, and your Weaver's Call Threadlings, that's going to be able to spread as much Strand debuff as possible. As far as what those stats are going to translate to, the reason I say 70 is important for weapon stats is you're going to get an extra 10% damage to your weapons in general, and that is going to be huge once we go through what we're going to get from said weapons. Our super, we want 190% super energy recharge rate. You could spec into this more or maybe get an additional 5% PvE, PvP damage, but honestly, you don't really need that because the idea of this build is as much chaos as possible. And of course, your grenade stat, you get an extra 4.6% when you're at 108. You could drop this down to 98 and just be under the 190 refresh rate for energy. But your grenade ability cooldown is 56 seconds, so trying to get that to 100 is going to be important. And with your melee stat, you see melee ability cooldown at 1 minute and 1 second, but you get 181% regeneration. Now, if I had one more piece of tiered gear in this, the melee stat would actually be at 100. So keep that in mind when you're making your builds. Tiered is going to be the difference, at least for me in this build, between having my high 90s and possibly traversing into those triple digits, which is what everyone's goal is going to be eventually once you get higher up on the power levels. For weapons, we're going to start off with Quanilus 2. Now, this is one of the better drops that I've gotten from it. Of course, you can see here it's a tier 3, so you get enhanced perks with this. Proximity power is an amazing perk. You get to have additional melee regeneration, basically. Improved amounts of bonus melee stat when targets are nearby, just by killing enemies with this weapon. So this is going to play into both sides of the power spectrum, so to speak, when it comes to your transcendence or your ability energy. Because darkness damage generates grenade, light generates melee. But in this, you're going to get both. Hatchling is going to be numero uno for my recommendation on this, simply because we want to cause as many chaotic events on the battlefield as possible. And with our exotic armor, any Threadling we generate is going to debuff a target that it doesn't kill. In the second to last column, the Vanguard Determination is what I prefer, but I could get just as many oohs and ahs, I guess so you can say, from Wildcard. So whichever one you prefer is totally fine. And then, of course, masterwork it and throw on whatever ballistics you want. Remember, we've got these weapon mods that are going on for Arms Race. They're going to be gone at the conclusion of Arms Race. So don't rely on these heavily because they're not going to be forever. So I just throw on the ballistics, which increases my range and stability. For the energy weapon, we are going to go with Devil's Ruin. Pyrogenesis. Solar laser scorches targets, hit, and ignites them when defeated. The intrinsic trait, Close the Gap. Final blows create fire sprites. After picking up a fire sprite, long press to enable a high-powered solar laser beam mode. Strong against unstoppable champions. It's actually strong against anything you shoot it at, and with our artifact, we're going to be able to take advantage of so many different buffs in this that generating fire sprites at the same time as being able to generate tangles and threadlings is going to make this an explosive swarm build. Last but not least, Pro Memoria. You know it. I love it. I will always love this weapon. I recommend crafting this with Reconstruction and Bait and Switch. Bait and Switch gives a 30% buff to weapon damage. It used to be 35, but it did get nerfed. As far as I know, it hasn't gotten nerfed in the Edge of Fate, but Cycle through your weapons and you get 30% damage buff. With the reconstruction, you are going to be having that 30 seconds to burn through up to 164 rounds of magazine when it's fully reconstructed, which means you can hold the trigger down with confidence that you are going to be just absolutely laying waste to the boss that you are laying into. Little bonus, you get the dealer's choice perk. Final blows with the weapon grant a small amount of super energy. So if for some reason you don't have Pro Memoria, get into the Pale Heart and start focusing those engrams so you can get this and jump back into your power grind. Keep in mind though, because this isn't a new release weapon, you don't get a tiered stat from this. So real quick before I go into the armor, you'll notice that there's these little green icons right here. That means that they are going to get buffed by the season. So you can see right here, Implement of Curiosity, my kinetic weapon damage is plus 6% and my energy slot weapon damage is plus 10%. That is going to stack directly with your weapon's character stat, at least how I understand it. So 11.1% here at 74 means this energy slot weapon is going to give me 21% additional damage, and my kinetic slot weapon damage is going to give me 17% additional weapon damage, which means my bait and switch on my power slot weapon damage is going to be even sweeter because it's going to stack with everything I'm already doing. For our armor, we're of course going to go with Swarmers. Swarmers is a featured exotic for this season, and for good reason. Swarmers, destroy a tangle spawns a threadling. Your threadlings unravel targets that they damage. This is going to be amazing when it comes to causing chaos on the battlefield and generating threadling after threadling after tangle after tangle. This is what you're going to need to generate that additional tick damage and of course look really cool while doing it. For the mods in the first column, go ahead and put on whatever general armor mod that you need. I'm going to quickly go through what my archetypes are, but you may have something different. So the key is just to spec into the armor mods heavily until you can start getting higher power tier gear. I've got the gunner in my class item. Swarmers, I made Grenadier because of course it hinges on threadlings and tangles. In the chest, I've got another Grenadier. This is just how it rolled for this specific stat build. In the gauntlets, I've got Paragon with the focus on weapons. And in the helmet, I've got Paragon, again, with a focus on weapons for that third tertiary stat. For the helmet in general, go ahead and spec into the Harmonic and Strand Solar dual siphon mod. Also recommend throwing on a heavy ammo finder since you're going to be burning through that Pro Memoria. In the second column, firepower and heavy-handed, numero unos as far as what to put on here. And then I have fastball on here just so I can chuck my threadling grenade faster and further. In the chest mod, go ahead and throw on 2 damage resistances. And whoops, I see I accidentally left my solar ammo on here, but you do want that to be Strand because of your heavy weapon. In the legs, go ahead and put on Innervation, Invigoration, and Absolution. Get those abilities back even faster. You'll notice that my class stat is at an amazing 15 right now, so our class font is going to buff us to plus 30, so I'm going to have 45 every time I pick up an Orb of Power, which again, your class stat is only a minute cooldown anyways, so you're going to be throwing your other abilities out there first and more frequently. When I use my class stat after killing that next enemy, I'm going to get an Orb of Power, and I want Outreach on here because I want to be able to pick more enemies off from a distance. For our artifact, in the first column, go ahead and put on Anti-Barrier Scout and Pulse. Not because you need it, but because if you do want to run with a different Strand primary weapon, there's a good pulse rifle out there. You can take advantage of the anti-barrier. In the second column, or in the second row there, Unstoppable Sidearm because of our Devil's Ruin, and Overload Rapid Fire. This is what I'm using for my submachine gun and or auto rifle. In the second column, Flame Fiber and Freeze combines Solar Strand and Solar Stasis Siphon mods. Tightly woven, you want to have this equipped while woven mail is active. Gain a additional increased class ability and grenade stats. In the third column, Fever and Chill, rapid precision hits with solar weapons, grants Radiant. This is going to be key when you are dealing with bosses and or large groups of adds. Reciprocal Draw, because our main ad clear is not going to be our sidearm Devil's Ruin. We can benefit from additional sidearm damage on top of that large Pyrogenesis beam. Refresh Threads, picking up an elemental pickup matching your subclass element or tangle when you have a Strand Super. Grants energy to your least charged ability. Yet again, another way to get faster. Weaver's Call. Elemental Coalescence, defeating targets has a chance to create an elemental pickup matching your equipped super. Now, if you didn't know, whatever super you have, it doesn't matter, whatever elemental weapon you use, you're going to get that pickup for the super. So yes, if I was using, I don't know, Stasis, for example, I could generate a Tangle periodically with Stasis weapons when I have my Strand Super equipped. Threaded Blast, destroy a Tangle with Strand damage, increases the radius of the explosion and its damage. This is going to be even more fun in my OG Strand version of this build, which I'll be coming out with here shortly. I'll just use that. Shield Crush is, of course, selected. I pretty much always have this selected because I get my melee recharge faster, and it also deals increased damage while I have Woven Mail. Now for the second one, we can debate on this in the comments, so tell me which one that you have selected. I prefer Tangled Web. Creating a tangle by defeating a Strand debuff target suspends nearby combatants. I understand this might not be the most DPS-y style perk to pick. You could make an argument for you could make an argument for Elemental Overdrive. You could make an argument for Radiant Shrapnel, but because Strand is more of a chaotic build, not necessarily like a pure DPS build, like say Song of Flame Super or Nova Bomb, for example, Tangled Web seems to make the most sense, especially if you're going into particularly sweaty areas when you're getting up higher on that power level grind. Tangled Web, you don't realize how much it actually helps until you take this off and then go back into whatever you were just doing with your Strand build, and you realize, oh, wow, that really does actually help condense the nonsense, especially when you're on Prismatic. Again, the OG Strand build I have for this style of play is a little bit different, so you could theoretically get away with taking Tangled Web off, technically, but even in there, you have that removed, and you're like, oh, wow, that really is useful. Because when it comes to the boss, you've already got the boss figured out. You know, you've got your Promemoria and you've got your Devil's Ruin. So what's left? Condensing the chaos around the boss if there's a bunch of ads. So Tangle Web, I think, is the play here. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. So one of the reasons I think you should try this build, and shout out to this drip. I don't really ever, showcase drip. But I really like this, I don't even know what you call it, like this splatter matter style looking drip. It looks pretty cool. I just discovered this the other day, so shout out to my noobness if you guys already knew this existed, but I think this looks pretty cool. Anyways, one of the reasons I think you should try this build is, hey, we loved our green buddies last season, and we've got some new ways to generate additional damage and chaos on the battlefield. Our artifact does favor Solar and Strand, so why not? What are you waiting for? Dive into those Strand builds and come up with some gems, and this, I think, is arguably a really good one. You could make the argument to switch out Devil's Ruin for something like Polaris Slants or Skyburners, but I think Devil's Ruin pairs very well with this because it's got very quick reload, it's got 2 different firing modes, you can generate fire sprites on kills, and then, oh, by the way, if that wasn't enough, you can get unraveling rounds and all these other things with your artifact, or with your class setup, and you can generate threadlings with your hatchling perk and bonus melee regen. So if you haven't really messed around with the Strand builds yet this season because you've been focusing on Solar, this is a very good blend of both of them. I'll have an OG Strand setup that's going to be kind of similar to this, but equally as chaotic and fun. So if you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you know a guy out there who loves their green buddies and wants to build a really good Swarmers build with some Solar behind it, make sure you share this video with them or send them my way. My goal is, of course, to help as many people as possible. As always, I will have a dim link in the description, and if by chance you are looking for a non-toxic gaming community, I highly recommend jumping into my Discord. It is filled with some really great people who are always willing to help, or at least pal around and, you know, continue your power grind, continue your leveling, or just bestow any kind of knowledge or help that they can give. So shout out to my Discord members for making it a really great community. So here we go. I'm getting started right away by laying into the boss with the Pyrogenesis Solar Beam from Devil's Ruin. Once I do that, I can fire off a quick couple of rounds from my kinetic weapon and then right into bait and switch with my Pro Memoria. And that's what makes this beautiful, is even when you are not actively reloading Pro Memoria, it is reloading itself, which means you have a 30% heavy ammo weapon buff on top of the buff from Devil's Ruin with Pyrogenesis. Keep in mind, I haven't used my Weaver's Call. I haven't used my Transcendence. I haven't even really been using many abilities. I'm just kind of going at it with brute force. But this build is incredibly easy to spec into. Fans of Strand and Solar have probably been already experimenting ways to combine the two elements together. And this build is just, quite honestly, just a cakewalk for most activities. Again, this is on expert, not grandmaster or master. I understand some people might see this and be like, oh, it's not that difficult. Well, if you haven't leveled up to where I'm at right now, which there's a lot of the community that hasn't, yeah, expert is difficult, and your buffs or your debuffs or your ability to generate kills could be lacking right now. So make sure you're grinding on those pinnacles. Make sure you're grinding at a higher level than what you're at, so you can keep leveling up your character and make this build work for you as, I mean, magnificently as you would expect it to as possible. So anyways, thank you guys for your support and your patience. Hopefully you liked the video. I will see you guys next time. Take care.